Geez, it's been 3 months ago since I actually have last played this game, mainly because I'll explain more details about that particular topic for later. So, hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch, based off from Kirby's Return to Dreamland back on the Nintendo Wii. So last time, we have basically did manage able to complete the arena, no problem, thanks to the forms of that glorious tornado copy ability, which as a result, we might use that again once we do manage able to unlock ourselves the true arena at some point in the future. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So today, for this video, is about the fact that we're able to actually get this thing started by showing you guys the majority of Merry Magoland, which is basically is a home to sub-games we can able to play. So as a result, about the fact that, like I mentioned this before, oh, I did not realize I actually got some stamps there. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how I got them, but hey, at least it's pretty cool to able to have plentiful of stamps, so potentially we can able to actually get ourselves not only some more masks, but also with some more items here and there as well. So basically, this is what you're able to obtain. You know, with these little tickets that we keep on collecting for the majority of the forms of the main game, obviously about the fact that the more you collect them, then obviously your stamps will be able to be added to the forms of your tickets and stuff like that, or some cards, whatever you want to be more specific. In addition to that, certain boss characters are also going to be invited as part of the background, so meaning about the fact that not only do you able to actually invite them during the forms of the actual main hub world, for the sake of the forms of Merry Magoland, but also about the fact that we can able to actually get additional masks as well. So even then though, that's actually pretty swell. So, but either way though, I suppose I should probably save that particular topic and doing it at some point in the next video as well, to able to actually mention about the fact that, well, again, I should probably save that for later, but I digress. So yeah, as I said before, it's been about almost 3 months ago since we've actually last played this game, because after all, about the fact that I've already managed able to recently finish up with Metroid Fusion, back in by the end of May, in this year in particular. In addition to that, both Mighty and Ray have already managed to finish up everything for the sake of the forms of Donkey Kong Country Returns, and especially noticeable with the other sort of Let's Plays here and there as well. Like, for instance, that we've already finished up everything for the likes of the forms of, well, let's just say, Pac-Man World Repack, and especially noticeable with Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, and especially noticeable with the forms of Sonic Origins for this Plus content. So, but either way, as you can see on screen, we actually stumbled across into ourselves missions that we can able to complete. Now, normally, we need to able to complete about 100 of these things, and somehow about the fact that certain missions do usually require you to able to not only complete level 1, but also level 2 here now as well, which I suppose I should probably explain more details about that once we're able to get this sub-games going. So, as I mentioned this before, unlike the Wii version that there's only like 2 sub-games, whilst in this game in particular, does have 10 sub-games. Well, 2 of them are brand new, and 8 of them are actually from Kirby's past. So, for instance, that the first sub-game we're about to show you guys is this familiar sub-game for those who ever played Kirby's Adventure before. This is called Egg Catcher, where basically all you have to do is basically you need to catch as many of those eggs as possible while trying to avoid eating the bombs. So, basically though, it's about the fact that I'm about to show you guys every single level variant for the likes of those sub-games. So for the most part, level 1 is not too bad, because it's especially noticeable because it's without doubt the easiest mode throughout the majority of the forms of sub-games for that matter. But the more you succeed, then obviously about the fact that not only does it give you some very unique endings, for the sake of the forms of some sub-games for that matter, but eventually you do manage to able to unlock not only level 2, but also with level 3 as well, and even harder difficulties once we get to the later sub-games for that matter. So, but either way though, yeah, I will try my best able to actually complete certain missions throughout, because even then though, as far as I'm aware, this is where the game starts to get, well, again, I'll explain more details in a moment. So, anywho though, something's worth noting for as well is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the I would say that today is the 2nd of August today, in this case in 2023 today. Naturally speaking though, about the fact that as far as what Sonic has already established that earlier, about the fact that we're now on to the 8th month of the forms of 2023 already, which is always pretty slow on my end, especially concerning about that particular point where, obviously about the fact that we were expecting to hoping to see, you know, Pokemon Presents Direct at some point, but I suppose we'll might as well find out more details about that once we get into not only, well, if it's possible it could happen at some point on the halfway point of August or something, I suppose we'll have to wait and find out. So either way, and yeah, that's basically all there is to really think about it. So yeah, with level 2 and level 3 coming up, for the sake of the Forms of the Egg Catcher, this is what I mean about the fact that the difficulty is about to get ridiculously hard, and especially noticeable because, relatively speaking though, that just like that, and all that things itself as far as this is worth knowing for, where all of a sudden, this particular game, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, although, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this game still, like, I love the actual main game and everything, but this is one of the points where it becomes one of the worst games I've ever played if you're going for completion. And what do I mean by that? Well, remember when I mentioned this earlier about the fact that in Journey Forms of Merry Magoland, there are some missions that you need to complete. Some of them are easy, but some of them are pretty tough. But as a result, it becomes one of the most infuriating missions that I'll have to able to go through. Like, for instance, in my own time, whenever I play this game my own time for a bit, as far as what I meant to say. Apologize for that commentary, because it's a bit slightly iffy at some form or another. But basically, what happens is that one of those missions coming up later, you have to almost get our perfection results in Journey Forms of level 3, and believe me, as soon as we're able to get to this point throughout the whole game, despite the fact that this is still going to be a full 100% completion of this entire playthrough of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, so to speak, and relatively speaking though, there are a couple of times I keep on messing up Journey Forms of some sub-games alone, and believe me, about the fact that it will took me a lot of retries. Well, specifically, when it gets to the point until likely on the harder difficulty settings, or to be more specifically, I'm also able to do the exact same, well, specifically if we're trying to able to complete certain missions on my own time, or potentially speaking, I'm also do the exactly the same method, as in not only Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, on the Switch version anyway, but also with the Forms of Mario Party Superstars. Well, what do I mean by that though, is that, well, I think I should probably save that topic for a later time, because for now, we're gonna be hit on to level 3 now, and things get a lot more crazy and hectic. And as I said before, one of those missions coming up, you do need to get a lot of timing perfectionist. And as a result, it can take you a lot of tries to do it. Now I think if I recall correctly, if you do manage to able to catch all 30 eggs, I believe that the actual DDD's machine, that it tosses eggs and stuff like that, somehow goes exploded. So meaning about the fact that, despite the fact that you can now able to play as King DDD in most of sub-games now, so because of that though, that's actually pretty slow I might add. Although despite the fact that Journey Forms have been single player, you pretty much get out to stuck with the Forms of Kirby for the majority of the time. But either way though, that might be saying something. So yeah, that was it for Egg Catcher. It's nice to see that particular sub-game makes its return, despite how difficult that sub-game can be. So as a result for that kind of stuff though, let's move on to the next sub-game, which appears to be somewhat feels a bit familiar for those who ever played Kirby Superstar before, although I'll explain more details on that in a moment, because as you can tell, we actually stumbled across into ourselves the Manager Megalore, or something relates to that, where basically it tells you the forms of certain missions that you have to complete, and especially noticeable for certain hints and tips here and there. But either way though, I suppose we should probably be able to get a lot of interactions with him during at some point until later. So even then, Now we need to able to talk to the forms of this particular Waddle Dee that managed able to host the forms of a souvenir shop, which not only gives you the option to able to wear one of those masks in particular, but also about the fact that you can able to actually get this, that you can able to actually use one of those special items you can able to use during in the main game. Like for instance, there are, I would say, a grand total of 5 items you can able to get. Like for instance, there is obviously the forms of let's just say maximum tomato, and especially noticeable with the party cannon or something like that, and especially noticeable with this bomb item, and on top of that with the forms of the soda bottle item, and finally exponentially is the randomizer copy ability roulette. So even though despite the fact that again it's been about 3 months ago since I actually have last played this, and exponentially speaking, when it comes to the forms of this entire let's play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe as the game itself, we're now onto the second half of the game, especially noticeable when it comes to fully 100% everything in the whole game so far. Because relatively speaking now, we've already finished up with the forms of the first half of the forms of this entire package so far. Like we've already completed the main game, and especially noticeable with the arena and Magoland Epilogue, which as a result, I actually do really still enjoy Magoland Epilogue in the end, but that's just because about the fact that with this unique presence or something like that. But either way, though, that must have been said something, so. And as you can see, folks, we're now on to the next sub-game, which appears to be Samurai Kirby, the returning sub-game ever since in Kirby Superstar. And as a result, it's nice to be able to see this sub-game in gorgeous HD this time around. In addition to that, you can now able to play as every single characters in the forms of that particular sub-game, which, as a result, that I'm still not very great at Samurai Kirby, but there's a catch to this though. There are 2 different versions of the forms of Samurai Kirby. One of them that you can able to actually play by not only for yourself, while simply trying to able to go against with not only for the likes of the forms of, let's just say, Bandetta Waddle Dee or something like that, but also about the fact that you can also able to actually compete against with not only with King Diddy, as well as the other guy, which I suppose I forgot to mention what his name was, but also out of nowhere, Magoland decides to join in the actual Samurai Kirby scenario this time, which is quite intriguing. In addition to that, of course, Meta Knight always has to be the final opponent for the sake of the forms of Samurai Kirby. Now, for the most part, level 1 and level 2 aren't too difficult, but in level 3, my god, level 3, I cannot stress enough about the fact that how much I absolutely not very great at the forms of Samurai Kirby as the sub-game itself. I mean, concept-wise, it's pretty simple for the most part, but you have to require a ridiculous amount of timing. And as a result about that particular point, you need to be at an exact split second to react. But most of the time, I was expecting to try my best able to pull this off, but most of the time, I keep on screwing up, which as a result, it gets worse during the forms of in, well, let's just say the second version of this particular Samurai Kirby as the game mode itself, where basically not only do you have to able to only access in online play, but also about the fact that you have to compete against with exactly 100 players all over the world. And as a result, this is what I mean about the fact that the mission structure for the sub-games in this particular version of the game just feels a bit, well, it's okay for the most part, but I will admit though right away, as I said before, it becomes one of the worst games I've ever played if you're going for completion. Like, as a result, I can imagine about the fact that anyone else gets, like, bruised thumbs or fingers, depending on the forms of certain sub-games you play for most of your time. Although, relatively speaking though, about the fact that, well, I'm sure it is still possible that I can able to actually show you guys the extra mode once this is all done. But believe me about the fact that during at some point in the later recording attempts or something like that in the future, my god, this one gonna take me a lot of tries. Although it's bad enough in during the forms of in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, at the very least that you do have the ability to able to, like, well, I don't know about you, if you complete certain missions once, then obviously you don't have to deal with all that stuff again. So at the very least that's that. Whilst for this though, it's about the fact that, well, despite the fact that you have to go through 100 missions in order to able to, well, even better, unlike the forms of how it does it on any other, like, Kirby games, where it comes to the forms of trying to do an entire completionist of it, well, as far as I'm aware, if you do manage to able to completely done with the forms of certain other modes, then you do get yourselves a nice little special cutscene at the end. Specifically, if you do manage to able to, let's just say, for example, in the original version of the game, basically if you complete the True Arena on the Wii version of the game, basically, and if you manage to able to reach for 100% completion, you get yourselves a nice little special ending of the actual cutscene and stuff like that. Whilst the other stuff though, like challenge stages, in the forms of the actual Magoland ship itself, it's just for bragging right bonus, assuming of course you're able to complete the stage once, and that's about it. So it doesn't really matter about the fact that what medals you get. So aside from the fact that the platinum medals are just for bragging right bonus, that you don't really necessarily need them in journey forms of any other games, or something like that. Whilst in here, the actual cutscene is locked out behind the missions you have to complete in journey forms of Magoland, which as a result of that kind of stuff though, it'll make the actual part sometimes close to impossible to obtain. The actual, well, missions in Merry Magoland is now compulsory for progression. They expect the world from you. Although, luckily you can still able to actually go into extra mode, which again, I'll do that after the rest of the forms of the Magoland land, or presumably for that matter, or I don't know about you. And exponentially we're able to actually do the True Arena, of course, towards the end, which not only it brings back the forms of certain bosses for, well, again, we should probably save that particular topic once we get to the forms of the True Arena in this version of the game. So, yeah, that's as far as I can say about it. So, yeah, there are quite a few things I would like to mention, is that recently I have finally managed able to fully 100% everything in Super Monkey Ball on the Nokia N-Gage. So, and what I found was a little bit interesting is about the fact that unlike in the other games, where basically in order able to actually access to extra stages, that basically you have to complete certain difficulties without using a single continue, whilst in journey forms within Super Monkey Ball on the Nokia N-Gage, luckily that in order able to actually access to Master Mode, what I did not realize right from the start though, is that I believe you have to complete not only beginner, but also advanced, and especially noticeable with expert difficulties without using the warp goals. So that's actually kind of an interesting twist right there, because relatively speaking, despite the game is actually super duper short. And as a result of that kind of stuff though, I honestly did not know that until I found out just recently about that particular point where, well, I don't know about you, because it's been about quite a few days since I actually have last played something related to the Super Monkey Ball stuff, but either way, I'm very glad that I finally managed to get myself Master Mode in Super Monkey Ball on the Nokia N-Gage. And, well, I suppose we're probably able to save that particular topic once we're able to actually get this Let's Play started on at some point in the future, for this year in particular, depending on the forms of certain parts throughout. But either way, though, that might have been said something, I suppose. So there we go, folks. That pretty much takes care of the forms of Samurai Kirby, for now anyway. Assuming, of course, about the fact that once we get to the later missions, my god, it will be super duper tough. Although exponentially, about the fact that the good thing about this is, though, if you keep on messing up in journey forms of some sub-games, at the very least you can able to replay them at any time, especially noticeable about the fact that if you desperately want able to go through every single portions of the game, obviously about the fact that you can able to get the ridiculous amount of stamp points into your stamp cards, and that will be a good opportunity for you to able to not only grind for some more of those specific items to your disposal, but also about the fact that it gives you a great opportunity to able to unlock some more masks, which, by the looks of all that counts though, the masks are pretty much cosmetic for the most part. Although, the only coolest thing about the forms of using masks to begin with is about the fact that you can able to actually create some cute little sound effects every time whenever you do manage to able to wear one. So, yeah, that's actually pretty cute, and all that stuff. So, But anyway, the next sub-game we're about to check out, and that's what appears to be Checkerboard Chase. Now, before we get into that, though, let me quickly go ahead and wear one of those masks in particular, likely, for instance, one of those characters based off from Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, which, speaking of which, is about the fact that here we go onto Checkerboard Chase, and this sub-game is obviously based off from Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. Except now, it's about time that Meta Knight is finally going to be able to play this particular sub-game. So, pretty cool and interesting at the same time. So, either way, though, that must have been said something. So, basically, all you have to do is just be the last man standing, whoever wins this particular sub-game. So, because of that, self-explanatory stuff, really. However, you can only manage able to get rid of those blocks from either horizontal or vertical position. So because of that, though, and exponentially you do have 5 units of health, and then once your all 5 units of health has been depleted, then obviously about the fact that the opponent is out. So yeah, that's basically how this goes, basically. So, but either way, though, for the most part, the easy level is pretty simple and self-explanatory, so you have to be very careful not to get knocked out quite a few times, because otherwise, if you dare manage able to knock someone out, basically, as you can see about the fact that the actual arena itself is actually gonna get smaller and smaller. So, relatively speaking, though, about the fact that you need to pay attention to the forms of the computer AI behavior, and especially noticeable, it doesn't help about the fact that once we get to normal, hard, or intense difficulty, my god, the intense difficulty will be something else entirely. But either way, though, and also as you can tell about the fact that we now have a time limit, similar to the forms of how it does in the original version of this particular sub-game as far as this is concerned. I mean, yeah, for the most part, I obviously had a lot of fun playing Checkerboard Chase. It's just about the fact that one of those missions in particular is going to give you on your nerves. Especially noticeable when it gets to the point it gets like super ridiculous. Although, as I mentioned this before about the fact that if I do have some bit of struggles with certain mission completionists, obviously, luckily I can able to actually activate the multiplayer, with only 2 exceptions, mind you. Now, it appears to be about the fact that if you do manage to able to actually access to let's just say 2-player or 3-player for that matter, because you do need to able to require one of these computer players for that matter, in order able to actually complete certain missions throughout. Because I'm pretty certain that it's possible with 4 players for certain missions, but I will admit though right away, I do need able to bring out my separate Joy-Con controllers that has been attached to my Nintendo Switch right now. Although, I should probably do that after we're done with the forms of the regular missions, so but either way, that must have been saying something, I guess. So, but then again though, I apologize if my commentary is a bit slightly iffy at this point today, because again, that's been 3 months ago almost since I've last played this. So, now in terms of the forms of the uploading schedules at this point right now, about the fact that we might able to actually do some slight adjustments for this. Like for instance, so far about the fact that Silver might need to take a break on playing Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania for a short while, mainly because about the fact that not only that during the forms of a weekends department, it needs to switch around. Like for instance, I believe Ray the Flying Squirrel might able to actually go back into Super Mario RPG during at some point in a weekends department, because as far as I'm aware, that he's almost finishing up the forms of Super Mario RPG. And on top of all that stuff though, that I'm pretty sure that Sonic is still carry on doing Sonic Frontiers for the likes of the forms of not only on Tuesdays, but also on Thursdays as well. So yeah, that'll be due for now. Especially noticeable about the fact that it's kind of unfortunate about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, we were expecting that we can able to actually finish up with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania before we hit on to the forms of the next Super Monkey Ball Let's Play, which appears to be Nokia N-Gage game, or possibly something else for that matter. But either way though, that particular topic will be later, for later anyway, so excuse me, I've got something on my throat there, I do apologize for this point, because something tells me about the fact that my stupid tongue just keeps on aiming at that particular fly, that tongue forces me want to eat one, which I refuse, because I'm not eating or kissing a frog or eat a bug at the same day. So, but either way though, you probably get the idea, because I'm still a frog of course, which even then, I might be okay where I'm as a frog form after all, so I guess nothing hurts me for the most part, so anywho though, so there are a few topics I would like to point things out, for the sake of time anyway. And that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, exponentially speaking, is about the fact that we're now onto the halfway point in terms of the forms of the Mario Kart Tour Sunshine Tour, but I suppose about the fact that I think it's probably best to let Sonic were able to actually mention more details about the forms of what rewards we did get after experiencing the first half of the forms of the Sunshine Tour, because I'm sure enough though, we're actually getting very close to the point about the fact that we can able to actually expect to see the next tour is going to be coming up at some point in during the forms of next week or two. So, but either way though, while we're still able to actually access to ourselves the Gold Pass subscription for it, so but either way though, that must have been said something, so... Oh, and by the way, something's worth noting for as well, about the fact that if you do manage to able to complete every single missions, depending on what sub-games you're playing, like for instance about the fact that if I was trying to able to complete every single missions in one of those sub-games, like for example if I do this on Checkerboard Chase, basically this allows me to able to unlock a classic music on that particular sub-game, which as a result, that it feels very similar to the forms of how it does it on not only Mario Party Superstars for the Switch, but also about the fact that with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania as well, despite the fact that you need to pay real money in order to able to actually access to the forms of that particular classic music pack for that particular DLC in mind. But that will be the topic for later, or specifically I believe that Silver has already managed to able to sort that out. During the forms have been a Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania so far. And exponentially speaking though about the fact that once he's going to go into Master level on the likes of the forms of Super Monkey Ball 2, which he's probably not going to be ready for that, especially noticeable because he definitely needs able to do a lot, I mean a lot of practice for the sake of the forms of one of the harder stages in the game by far, and especially noticeable about the fact that exponentially speaking though about the fact that I get the horrible sense of feeling that when it comes to the forms of not only Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, but also with the forms of this game, to me anyway, that completionist requirement is ridiculous. Which as a result of that kind of stuff though, about the fact that with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania's case, you have to complete so many missions. In addition to that, about the fact that this game also has some missions we do need to complete as well, but exponentially speaking though, about the fact that it just feels a bit, well, too much for my liking. Well, at the very least though, about that particular point that it does have a lot of replay value to it though, which I totally get it for that point. So, anyway, so as you can see, we're now able to actually stumble across into ourselves something new to the table, and that's what appears to be the high-speed mode, where basically what that does is that allows every single characters can now able to run ridiculously fast in this particular mode. So, yeah, that's basically all there is to it though when it comes to this mode in general, or potentially speaking with this particular sub-game in mind. So it's pretty fun though, and it also gets pretty intense as well if you try to able to do high-speed mode, because obviously you go insanely fast. And also something's worth noting for about the fact that the actual background is actually in a different color too. So but either way though, that must have been said something, so... Anyway, that's pretty much about it for easy mode for the majority of the time. So even then, eventually at some point is about the fact that certain opponents will get randomized, and also occasionally they start able to wearing certain masks, depending on what certain stimulations they're able to actually expect it will do. So even though sometimes I will admit though right away is about the fact that, oh jeez, that was close. Because I almost gonna get myself cramped up a little bit, especially noticeable because if I dare stand in one of those blocks in particular, stand alone, or something relates to that, then obviously I might as well get myself screwed over. Especially noticeable when it gets to the point until likely on the intense high-speed mode, my god, it will be insane. So anyway, in terms of everything else I could possibly explain about this as well, about the fact that it's been a couple of days ago now since I actually have last played Sonic Dash. Well, that's mainly because about the fact that I am not very happy about the fact that with the actual unlockable character system, which as a result about the fact that they now start to introduce into ourselves, you know, collectible cards and stuff like that, which as a result, yeah, that's as far as I can usually think about it. So either way, because I was assuming if I was trying to able to grab myself, or obtain, for that matter, certain other characters in general, like for instance with Whisper, and especially noticeable with the forms of another cosmetic characters here and there, like the Captain Pirate Shadow, and especially noticeable with any other characters for that matter. But unfortunately though, that the update is now becoming a thing after all. So either way though, it's kind of unfortunate that I don't seem able to be bothered able to go back into Sonic Dash for some time now. And also, short things worth noting for is about the fact that there's also yet another version of Sonic Dash, which as a result is just a reskin, and not only that, it feels like a ripoff to me, which as a result, that the game is called Sonic Prime Dash, if I was assuming so what that game is actually called. And as a result, it's just Sonic Dash again, except this time you do able to actually access to the actual Sonic Prime characters from the start. And that's about it when it comes to that massive difference between not only regular Sonic Dash game, but also with the forms of Sonic Prime Dash. So yeah, it feels like a waste of download in my opinion, especially noticeable about the fact that although the only thing it's worth noting for is that in order able to play the game for real, you do need to able to actually sign in to your Netflix account, and that's the only difference, another huge differences anyway. So yeah, kind of a waste of opportunity. What if I do manage to able to download that particular app in the first place? But that's just because about the fact that at this point in time, I've already managed to able to almost gotten every character in during the forms of Sonic Dash as the game itself. Although aside from the fact that I missed quite a few characters because of the forms of time constraints or something like that. But also exponentially speaking, it's about the fact that, oh, nice, I somehow managed to win for once. Nice. Anywho though, so yeah, that was about it for Checkerboard Chase, but then again, we'll be back for that particular sub-game until for later time, because one of those missions in particular is gonna be a test of patience, which as a result, again, we'll save that particular topic at some point in the future. So anyway, so you get certain masks based off from not only in Kirby's Dreamland, but all the way up to, let's just say, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, presumably speaking. Because I know for a fact that this game was actually the last Kirby game to able to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Kirby franchise in general. Oh, by the way, the more you complete certain missions, then you get yourself some pretty cool golden statue variants of certain characters. And especially noticeable, as you can tell, we've now able to actually access to another one of those modes in the forms within Magoland, or Merry Magoland as far as what I was going to be meant to say. So, let's move on to the next sub-game, which as you can see, we now stumbled across into Bomb Rally, which basically, this particular sub-game is the returning sub-game based off from Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance, which I almost assume about the fact that that game might potentially make its release on the actual NSO expansion pack, although mind you about the fact that the actual releases so far, that is actually gone pretty bare bones when it comes to the forms of the actual, like, you know, a few games we got left for the sake of the forms of the actual Nintendo Switch online subscription services, because either way, so far that we actually got not only The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, but also Oracle of Seasons as well, which, as a result of that particular point about the fact that we've almost got ourselves the ultimate Zelda machine, basically, when it comes to the forms of the Nintendo Switch itself, aside from a few exceptions, which there are. Obviously, we're still waiting for the forms of the Wind Waker, as well as Twilight Princess was expected to be on the Switch by this point, but obviously about the fact that everyone else keeps on talking about it, and nothing happened so far. So, but either way though, it just feels a bit kind of confusing at points, so, but I digress. So, yeah, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. What was your favorite sub-game you've played during the forms within Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe so far? For me personally though, it is actually a tough choice between not only a new sub-game, which we're about to show that off at some point until on Friday, but also about the fact that with the forms of Checkerboard Chase, despite how chaotic that can be, in addition to that with the forms of that particular returning sub-game based off from Kirby's Return to Dreamland on the Wii, that's of course Ninja JoJo. So because of that though, well, I suppose another thing I should probably explain about this as well, as I said before, that unfortunately though, Scope Shot is no longer present in this particular sub-games variety, but that's just because about the fact that that particular sub-game is the only sub-game in the entire Kirby series that does requires motion controls. Oh, and speaking of motion controls though, there's actually another control method in terms of some sub-games in general that you can also utilize the motion controls if you feel like it. Like for instance certain sub-games, as far as I'm aware, which are Samurai Kirby as well as Bomb Rally, and especially noticeable with the forms of Kirby on the Draw, and especially noticeable with the forms of Ninja JoJo as well, that those are the only sub-games that does requires motion controls. Well, they are optional, especially noticeable because if you don't feel like trying to use motion controls to begin with, luckily you can able to utilize with button controls. So, relatively speaking though, because that's the way I do feel like it, when it comes to only utilizing the button controls in the first place. So, yeah, that's about it basically. So now we're going to be moving on to, let's just say, level 3 version of this particular Bomb Rally. Even though, mind you, about the fact that I'm decent at it, but it's just about the fact that it gets a bit chaos at times, especially noticeable about the fact that, and it's going to be annoying for me, about the fact that sometimes I will admit though, certain missions that you do need to complete, some of them are easy as I mentioned earlier, but some of them are very inconsistent and annoying at times, and some of them are impossible. Like for instance about the fact that in certain sub-games, you have to win certain sub-games without losing a single win streak, and as a result, that, again, I'll explain more details about that particular topic until for later, for the majority of this particular Let's Play itself. But for the most part, we're actually not doing too bad, even though despite the fact that unfortunately my laptop decides to able to lag again, which, sure enough, I'll try to fix that at some point, so... And there we go, we did somehow win level 3 in Bomb Rally, so either way though, awesome and top-notch at the same time, so... And there we go, we somehow managed to able to almost completely done with everything on here. It's just about the fact that sometimes I always get misleading for the likes of the forms of certain mission objectives as far as this is concerned. But it's just about the fact that, the most annoying missions for me anyway, you have to win, even though it sounds a bit crazy, but you know what's my least favorite missions in the whole game are? Is that you have to win few of those games in a row without losing a win streak. Which, it does remind me of a similar situation as the forms of the survival mission objectives for the sake of the Mario Party Superstars game, which, by all means by that, well, obviously about the fact that that's what I mean about the fact that I have to able to utilize the cloud feature in order able to make this particular part successful, but as you can see, I somehow lost my win streak, so because of this though, I'll be back for that eventually. I will be back for this, and believe me, there's gonna be a lot of like, well, that's another thing that somehow kills the actual points about the forms of 100% completion to me though, is that you have to miraculously try to able to actually start that particular sub-minigame again. But even then, it gets a lot of repetition if you do manage to able to dare trying to able to actually complete certain parts throughout. And it's just about the fact that this is another reason why that this playthrough might take a bit longer than the forms of how it does it on any other Kirby Let's Plays up to this point. Oh, I completely forgot about that particular motion controls you can also use in Crackity Hack minigame as well as we're going to be able to dive right into right now. So yeah, speaking of Crackity Hack, here's another sub-game is also being returned from the past Kirby game, except this one is actually based off from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, which as a result, Crackity Hack is one of them. So, I kinda wish if they were able to include another one of those sub-games in particular, based off from Nightmare in Dreamland, likely also for the fact that I love rail grinding so much, but either way though, I suppose beggars else can't be choosers, I guess, so... Yeah, basically in Crackity Hack is pretty simple. Well, specifically in level 1 and level 2 anyway, is that you need to fill up the entire gauge, and once you're in full power, you need to do an exact button press right onto the actual lock-on cursor, and basically that way you can able to actually get yourself some good distance, all things considered. So... And it seems about the fact that it's not the perfect run, but at least I did pretty alright and such. And oh boy, when it gets to level 3 though, it gets pretty ridiculous if you ask me, with all that completionist needs to be required. So, anyways, I guess it's that for level 1. So, as I said, level 1 is actually super duper easy, whilst level 2 is somewhat of a mixed difficulty. And as far as level 3 is concerned, my god, computer players are very, very good at this game. Especially noticeable because, relatively speaking, as I said before, this is what the completionist requirement is super ridiculous. I don't think I actually succeed, didn't I? Or maybe. I still managed to win regardless. But it's just about the fact that one of those missions in particular that I have to able to reach a maximum of 999.9 points. So, yeah, let me give this a little bit of a retry right there. And also another thing too is that depending on what difficulty you select, the actual gauge decides able to speed up a bit. So, and I'm guessing this is not a perfect aim shot either. Nah, still not perfect. God dang it. But, yeah, that's as far as I can talk about the forms of today's discussion. Although, then again, I'll let Sonic be able to mention more details on other topic and during at some point until tomorrow for Sonic Frontiers case, because obviously about the fact that, exponentially speaking... and another thing is worth noting for as well, that recently Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has been recently finally came out on Disney+. And fundamentally though, this is technically our third time watching this. Get it? Because this is the third volume in terms of the forms of the Guardians of the Galaxy film series. So I can possibly understand it. And why do I keep messing up at this point? Especially noticeable, this is a perfect example of why. That until when it gets to the point it's on the hardest missions in the entire Kirby history, in my opinion, is about the fact that sometimes you need to be perfection at timing. And as a result, about the fact that if I mess up once in during one of those missions, then I have to do exactly the same strategy as the forms of trying to win certain mini-games in, let's just say, in Mario Party Superstars, for example. That, assuming, of course, about the fact that if my cloud save data has actually been the case. So, but either way, though, thank goodness we've now reached our highest amount of score, which is usually 999.99 points. So, that's actually pretty swell, I might add. Despite it takes a bit of a while to able to actually get the timing going. So, now we're on to level 3, and this is what gets really, really super duper tough. And I think I somehow lost, if I was assuming so. Or perhaps even maybe it's going to be a massive tie. Wait a minute, I don't think it's going to be a tie because I somehow lost. Oh, jeez. But at least we'll give this another go, I guess. But at the very least I came in third, so... you see what I mean about the fact that this is going to be... This can take a while. Although it could help, especially noticeable if I'm having a bit of struggles with the extra mode we're about to dive into at some point soon. Obviously about the fact that that helps me out for not only get ourselves some more healing items, but also some useful items here and there. And exponentially speaking, certain sub-games are very, very short as well. So relatively speaking, though, it doesn't take me too long, unlike certain other sub-games we're about to dive right into at some point in the future. So, anyway, so we did somehow manage to succeed in level 3, despite the fact that, well, relatively speaking, that it does take me quite a while to able to get to this point. So, anyway, so, yeah, I might as well give this one last chance, and hopefully I can able to actually succeed this. And if I don't, then I'll have to figure something out. And something tells me I've lost. And it's even bad enough, if you dare restart, obviously your win streak is also lost. So, that's a bit lame. I think I'll admit though right away, I'm not very great at Crackity Hack, I'll admit though. Because I think this is the only sub-game I'm also able to retry the most. When it comes to those ridiculous missions anyway. Because, I mean, look how great those computer players are. They're doing exponentially super duper good. Even with King DDD and the other player in mind. I mean, seriously. And it looks like I somehow win along with the other computer player, so that's pretty insane. And even what's more insane is about the fact that that comes from the other side of the actual planet itself, which I thought was quite hilarious. So it looks like that, yeah, one of those missions has not been completed, so that sucks. Although, nothing matters anyway though, because obviously we'll get some more stamps in the process, so that way we can get some more masks, and quite frankly though, we've almost at number 50 as far as I'm aware, because we do need to reach for about 50 stamp cards as far as I'm aware to complete another one of those missions in particular, so... And it looks like we got ourselves another golden statue right there, so yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So with that being said for this point, I think we should probably end things off this point right here, so join me next time for more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and that will show off the other half, in terms of the forms of some sub-games for that matter, starting with Smash Ride, all the way up to Booming Blasters, so that'll be quite interesting. So I'll see you guys, enjoy that at some point on Friday. Later fellas.